or something like that. And, yeah. No, I got that. But you're going to be doing it again, later on in the week, I guess, like Friday or so?
Wednesday, Friday.
Because I know you're out of town. And
We'll be here. We'll be on. We practice on campus when we go out of town.
Okay, so you'll be on camp, and it's like the 3:30. I wanted to see, because if I could maybe talk to some of the assistants or record an interview or something would go on by that period of time and all this.
Just have them on just bring them on during this time too.
Yeah, well, I talked to Mike White, and he was sort of like, "Well, I'm trying, but anyway, I'd like to." But yeah,
if they want to, I'd love for those guys to be on. No problem.
Well, yeah, because I obviously wanted a lot of guys right there. They got McLeod and all this, so and certainly Bradford. I got some questions here, but all right, let's start this bad boy. What do you say? He's one of the hottest head coaches in college basketball and getting national attention too, including from Chris Lowe of ESPN, who, by the way, will be my guest tomorrow at 12:30 on Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Mark E. Bilson. We're talking about Steve Forbes, not the former presidential candidate, although right now I think he could probably run for office in the Tri-Cities and be a good bet to win. It's always nice, our weekly chat on Monday at 1 o'clock with the head coach of the ETSU Buccaneers. 15 victories in a row, one off the school record after an impressive victory against arch rival Chattanooga. First question I want to ask you, what's the biggest difference, Steve Forbes, between this team now and the one that started the season losing by 19 to Northern Kentucky?
Yeah, I think what it is, Mark, I think we had guys that returned to our team that were just playing in a little bit different roles. And when you go from being a guy who was a backup last year and playing behind TJ Cromer and AJ Merriweather and Kevin Glass and Hunter Perea, you don't have the game pressure on you as much because you're not playing the major minutes. You come in, you play a role, you do a good job, and then you get out, and those guys play the major minutes. These guys, the guys Peter Jerkin and David Burrell and Jermaine Long and Devontavious Payne and Jalen McLeod, those guys had to settle into that role and playing the major minutes when you had game pressure on you. I think that's probably the biggest change. Those guys have got comfortable in that role and have produced in that role, where in the past, they didn't really have to because they were coming off the bench.
Well, Steve Forbes, I know that this is a very deep team. I've seen 11 players who have averaged 10 or more minutes, and I looked up the records, which I could find for the rest of the century. It was very difficult to find records from the 90s and all that, but I don't believe there's ever been an ETSU team that had that average. Now, admittedly, one of the players is no longer on the team, but still, 10 players that average 10 or more minutes is quite impressive in terms of role and learning the role. But one guy I wanted to talk to you about before I get to DeSanta Bradford is Jalen McLeod, who, of course, transferred from Texas Southern. Here's a guy who on an NCAA team last year, he wasn't the leading scorer. He only averaged 8.5 points, but now it's not unheard of for him to go out and score 20 on his role with the Buccaneers. How did you foresee that he could be such a scorer when you got him to come to ETSU, or are you even surprised that he's scoring at this rate?
Well, no, I watched a lot of film on him, and based on what he did at Texas Southern to make the decision to even bring him here, and I felt like he could score. He played on a team with another guard that just really dominated the ball a lot, but when Jalen did have the ball in his hands, he always made really good decisions, and he shot it in there pretty well. So some of it was just opportunity. It's kind of not on the same level, but a little bit like Gelon. My first year, Gelon averaged 3 points a game in Cincinnati and averaged 19 for us. But it was really just opportunity to get some more shots and get the ball in his hands. I thought he was really good with the ball in his hands when I watched him on film, and he's proven that. And he's scored more and more over time because I think he's become more and more comfortable in our
You talk about systems, and I'm seeing this deep team. I think of systems and teams that, mid-majors, who have done well in the NCAA tournament, and I know you're going to love me, I've already got you in the NCAA tournament, but a lot of bracketologists do, Steve Forbes. But, you see a Butler that goes and plays for the national championship in back-to-back years. They're not doing it with the individual player like Davidson did with Steph Curry. They're doing it more with systems. Or you could say that about George Mason or VCU or whoever who've had runs into the NCAAs in recent years. And my question for you, though, is that I know you've always talked about in tournament play, you've got to have a good center. You've got Jerkin, you've got Armas. But it seems to me the game is going away from that it's going more three-point style. So why do you need this, dare I say, old-fashioned style of a good center when the game is going so far outside?
Well, I just say that because defensively at the rim, you don't want to give up easy baskets. Sometimes when you get in those matchups, the high major teams are always going to have a couple, three guys, 6'10" or above. And what you don't want to do is not have anybody of that equal size. So, instead you got a 6'7" guy standing behind him in the post. He's not going to put up any fight. And I only say that just for defense. But I agree with you. It is a guard game, and it is a three-point game. And that's why we've had a lot of success this year, because we've been able to defend the three-point line at a really high rate. We've done a really good job of defending that line, and so it's been hard to beat us because we're not giving up threes, and we haven't given up a lot of free throws. Threes and frees are easy baskets, and so that's made our team defensively really good. I think system-wise, what I've always believed in is, I told you I would like to recruit offense, coach defense, and then I believe that getting long, athletic players that have some skill. And then our length on the perimeter is effective, and it's harder for teams to score over us, and we'll continue to recruit that way in the future.
Well, now let me ask you, DeSanta Bradford, I know that I guess Fletcher McGee might be the leading scorer in the league so far, but and I know that I love Francis Alonso. Devin Sibley won the Player of the Year last year, but all right, make your case right now. I'm sure you'd like to for DeSanta Bradford Player of the Year in the Southern Conference.
I don't think it's even close. First of all, I put a big premium on winning. And my first year, Marky, and I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way to Stephen Croon, but I voted for Trey McClain because Chattanooga was by far the best team in the league, and he was the best player on Chattanooga. He didn't get it. A team that finished either third or fourth got the guy last year. I thought TJ Cromer should have been the Player of the Year. Now, I don't get a vote for my own player, but we had the best team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And he had great stats, but he didn't get it. This year, not only is DeSante scoring the ball, but if you go look at the individual stats in the league, he's in the top 10 on almost every one of them but one. And so he's been very consistent in all avenues as far as shooting the ball, handling the ball, rebounding the ball, block shots, steals. He's in the top 10 in everything, and his team is 12-0. And so as of today, it's not over. I don't think it's close, the vote, in my mind, based on those factors. But, again, I don't get a vote for my own player. And, sometimes these things, I've come to terms with these things over the years that sometimes they become a popularity contest. Sometimes they become, well, we don't like that team, so we're not going to vote for that kid. Or maybe we're not going to vote for that kid so we can help my guy get, all league. I don't do it that way. I vote straight down the line how I feel who are the best players in the league.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I know that when ETSU was in the Atlantic Sun Conference, it was often said, you said popularity contest. Jacksonville supposedly was not a very popular team within the league. And as a result, Jacksonville never really seemed to get the awards, even though they contended for championships, that, say, ETSU or Belmont did. We're talking to Steve Forbes.
Like last year, I sent a text to Wes Miller after they voted for all-league players, and UNC Greensboro didn't have a first-team all-league player, and they finished tied for first in the league. How is Francis Alonso on our first team? I think that's pitiful.
I would have voted Francis Alonso. I mean, I know you just mentioned TJ Cromer, but I just loved his shooting ability.
I voted Francis Alonso the Player of the Year.
I did. I would have done that myself. That would have been my selection.
But he didn't even make first team in the coaches poll. I think that's atrocious. I don't know how that could happen. And so I don't try to lose a lot of sleep over these things. You know what I mean? I just let them move on. And the biggest prize is the winning. You know, and that's the stuff I tell to our players is, you know, the big prize is winning the championships and putting up the banners.
And, 15 in a row right now for ETSU, 21-4. And it looks like, you're 3 victories away from being the first coach and really the first ETSU team to win 24 or more games in 3 straight seasons. I wanted DeSanta Bradford, a game against Chattanooga. Man, it was a close game, 18-18 before you pulled away and really took control the rest of the way out on a 14-2 run. I looked this up. DeSanta Bradford, during that run, 7 points, assisted on another player's 3-pointer, so that's 10 points maybe you give credit to him on, as well as a steal during that 14-2 run. Now, Bradford's a player you inherited. He's a senior. When did you realize how good DeSanta Bradford could be?
Oh, I saw greatness in him during his sophomore year, probably after Christmas, but he never saw it in himself. And that was always the rub between me and him. We have a great relationship, but DeSanta's probably received some of the hardest rear end chewings I've ever given out. Just because I was frustrated with him not imposing his will and his talent on a consistent basis in games. And his sophomore year would have been my first year. He came off the bench, but he had some games where he was just tremendous, but then he'd have some games he disappeared. And then last year he started every game, and again, it's kind of the same deal. Not as bad, but, and again, he's playing with G-Line and TJ his first year. He's playing with TJ last year and AJ and, that group. So maybe he doesn't feel like, that it's his time. But he's the most talented player in our conference. I think you'd have a hard time not arguing that. But he's the most talented player. He hasn't always been the most consistent, and that's why he's taken off, because he is now playing consistent, and he's playing at a really high level. He's playing with a lot of confidence, and he's having a lot of fun.
We're talking to Steve Forbes, who's the coach that's won 15 games in a row for ETSU this season. 6,000 people to see him beat Chattanooga here on Saturday. It's a week off before a trip to VMI, and the lowly cadets are all that stand in the way from tying the ETSU record for consecutive victories set back in 2004. Then a trip. A lot of people think this will be your toughest game of the year to UNCG, at least that's left on the schedule, and Francis Alonso and such. That'll be the game for 17 that'll occur next week. But how big is winning 15? What kind of attention are you receiving? We mentioned Chris Lowe, who'll be on the show, was there this week hanging around the team and doing some reporting. But this 15-game winning streak, what has it meant to the ETSU program?
Well, I think you just said it. It's brought a lot of exposure to our program. And first and foremost, I'm always very appreciative of the local coverage that we get. You and then the other radio stations and the print media. We get good coverage here in our area, and so I'm always very, very appreciative of that first and foremost. But the streak has brought some national attention, as you said, from ESPN. It's brought some national attention from the Athletic. Matt Craig was here doing a feature on Peter, and a couple when we beat Citadel, ESPN did a mid-major minute on us, and there's a minute segment of our Sports Center of our program. I think those things were all really, really good, and so the streak has brought back a lot of national attention to our program. Now it doesn't rule our world. It's not really true. It's not something that we even talk about, and we're not running from it, but it's not something that dominates our talk or our thinking when we prepare to play games.
Talking to Steve Forbes, so yes, that's a very nice, uncliched way to say we take them one at a time, right there.
That's a boring thing to say.
Yes.
They get mad at Nick Saban, when he a row. You know, and so I've done it before. I've been a part of it before, and you just got to stay focused and firm, because if you don't, you're gonna slip up, and then it's over. And so you got to give everybody the respect that they deserve.
You know, the 68 team, I know they were honored, and Tommy Woods spoke to some of the players, you know, and I found that interesting because I remember earlier, you know, you spoke of, geez, I didn't know when I got here that ETSU had been in the OVC, you know, this sort of thing. And I guess that's one thing that I want to ask, and you talk about the attention that ETSU gets, but when you were first contacted by ETSU, how'd you like to coach here? What was your first perception? What did you know about ETSU at the time?
Yeah. I was extremely excited because I knew people here loved basketball. You know, I'd been at Tennessee for 5 years. We played ETSU maybe once or twice. I've been up into the Tri-Cities to see the Arby's. I've been to somewhere, I can't remember. I went over here to see Oak Hill play one night somewhere. So I knew basketball was really important. I also knew at that point there wasn't a football program. And so basketball was something that these people here had always loved. And so that was very, very, very exciting to me. Now, you know, I have a history degree, and I pride myself on knowing history really well. And, you know, the OVC thing, I was born in 1965. So, you know, you haven't been in the OVC in a long time, and there's no trophies around my office or anything right here that says OVC on it. You know, so, you know, when I was driving, we were driving to Moorhead last year, my bus driver, Bill, I was like, man, it's a hard drive we were talking about the drive, you know, from here, Johnson City to Moorhead, and he said, well, I was bringing the team up here today to the OVC, and I was like, dang, you know, and so I was very, very honored to have those guys back, and I went out to dinner with them on Friday night, and I asked Tommy to speak to our team because I wanted our guys to hear the trials and tribulations that he went through as a player, as being the first black player in 1963 to play here. And he's a tremendous man. He's very well spoken, and I thought it really impacted our kids. I thought I could tell, and I watched him as he spoke, and they were very focused on what he was saying, and what they understand is that this isn't a coach's program, this is a player's program. So when 10 years from now, these guys are going to have a bond. You know, they all played at ETSU. They want to, you know, the group last year wanted to put up a banner. That group put up a banner 67, 68. So for the rest of their lives, they'll have a bond together. And I think it's really important for our kids to feel that and understand that. And that's why I thought it was really special to have those guys back.
You mentioned Woods being the first African-American player in ETSU history. Now, I can recall talking to John Rushaw, who was the first black football player in ETSU history, and what that was like. And he said, you know, it wasn't like George Wallace here. I might have heard a comment or something on the way to class, but not as much as you would think. His great tale of woe was having a bucket of water tossed on him coming out onto the field at the Citadel in 1966, a 3-0 Citadel victory against ETSU on the gridiron. Did Tommy Woods have any such stories that he related to the team?
Well, Tommy paved the way for him. You know, that was the point I was trying to make to my players, that Tommy paved the way for all of you. And he went through what he went through, so you didn't have to. Yeah, he had stories, and they were way worse than buckets of water. And, you know, they needed to hear that. They did. And he handled it like he's a very, just a very unique person. You know, he's very humble. And his teammates loved him, and you can tell. I mean, he didn't play on the 67, 68 team, but they still wanted him to come back because they played together. That's how much they care about him. And he told one story about, one of the stories he told was they went to eat, and they weren't going to serve Tommy. So the players got their food, and they turned their food upside down and left. So a lot of times when they were in certain areas of the country, they had to just eat box lunches on the way home because they weren't going to eat without it. And I find that just absolutely, you know, I love that fact that his teammates loved him like that, but I also find that as an atrocious way to treat a human being.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that he had to go through, you know, to make it easier for the next guy, the guy you mentioned, John, that played football, and then the next guy, now Jermaine Long,
Mm-hmm.
I think they got it tough. No, you don't really have it tough. Tommy Wood had it tough.
We're talking to Steve Forbes and about the reunion with the teams, the players of the 60s that ETSU had in their victory against Chattanooga here on Saturday. One guy also that was there was a former coach, Leroy Fisher of ETSU. Yeah. If memory serves, and yeah, it's a little before my time as well, but I seem to recall Leroy Fisher and David Letterman having similar fashion sense, because if memory serves, Leroy Fisher would wear a suit with sneakers while coaching the Buccaneers at Brooks Gym. I think I once saw a picture of him, and that's true. Now, but I wanted to ask Leroy Fisher, I mean, he had a losing record at ETSU, and he came, you mentioned the Sweet 16 team of 68. ETSU fell after that. They fell hard within 3 years after their national ranking in 1991, and the team that you may tie their winning streak on the back-to-back NCAA tournament berths of DeChillis and Bartow and Wadood and Fields, they also fell real fast as soon as Wadood and Fields graduated. Now, there are some people that are saying that maybe another program will take you away from ETSU after this year. We'll get to that at another time. But I want to ask what you're doing as a coach to make sure that you can continue to have this program at a level that they can contend for conference championships and not have the fall from grace that, let's say, a Leroy Fisher experienced.
I recruit differently than those people do. You know, those guys recruit high school players exclusively, and when that one good class graduated, maybe it dipped. You know, I don't recruit that way. I recruit for the next year. Now that doesn't mean I don't recruit high school players, because Bo Hodges and Milan Armas and Jason Williams are really good players, and the guys we signed early this year are really good players. That's not to say that I don't, but I'm going to always make sure we have really good players, because really good players make really good coaches. And I'm a very active recruiter as a head coach. Now, I can't speak for those other guys because I don't know, but I know for me, I recruit like I'm an assistant, and I don't wait around for guys to come. I mean, you know, I'm leaving tomorrow for 2 days to go recruit in the middle of the week and go out of state. And so it's all about recruiting. That's why you have good teams, because you recruit good players, and good players make good coaches. And so, you know, that's why teams dip, because they don't do a good job recruiting.
Steve Forbes going for the program record 16th straight victory to tie it on Saturday against VMI up in Lexington, and then a chance against at Greensboro to, if the Buccaneers defeat the Runnin' Roos, well, then they'll have a chance to set the ETSU record for longest wins in a row with 17 at UNCG. Always a pleasure. Do this again next week. We'll talk a little bit more about, well, what teams need to do to go to the Super Bowl next year when we return on Tri-City Sports Now. Well, thank you very much. And